Today's video is sponsored by Uppercase Designs. What's up YouTube, and welcome to another draw along with me, where today we're going to be going ahead and creating this 3D paper design. Now, as always, you can go ahead and grab all of the requirements from the description down below. We can grab the canvas size, the link to the paper texture that I've provided, and of course the palette and anything else that you're going to need for today's tutorial. Now, also down there, you'll also find the layer count, because this particular design, we are going to stagger quite a lot of layers backwards in terms of the paper and then their shadows, etc. So make sure you go ahead and create a canvas size that has the right amount of layers for today's design. So you may need to shrink that down potentially. As always, when you're done with today's design, make sure to tag me in your finished creations over on Instagram, share them with the community over on Discord. And with all that said, let's get started. But before we do, I want to show you the Ghost Paper Air. It's a premium screen protector from the folks over at Uppercase Designs. Now, it doesn't rely on magnets or messy adhesives. You can detach and reposition the screen cover over and over using their AirTach technology. Gone are the days of a permanent misaligned screen cover or having to watch a film through the textured screen. The Ghost Paper Air allows you to easily switch between work and play, and of course it features a beautifully textured surface to replicate that paper feel when taking notes or drawing with your Apple Pencil. Now, if you want to check out the Ghost Paper Air, I'll leave a link to it in the description down below, and I'm going to be using it throughout the whole of this tutorial, so let's see what it's like. So as always, let's go up to our actions. Let's go ahead and go to the Canvas tab, and we're going to turn on the drawing guide, and we're going to edit that drawing guide. And we're going to go ahead and use the 2D grid, and you're going to want to set your grid size to whatever is a quarter of your canvas size. So for me, that's 500. If you've used the same as me, we're good to go. And then when you're done, just hit done in the top right. That way you can use the grid to then lay out your design exactly the same as how I do mine. And then you can sort of position it as well based on where it falls within the grid. So let's go ahead first of all, and let's create our frame. So on the empty layer here, we're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and we're going to grab the middle color in the first column. And then we're going to go to our brush. Now you can set this to calligraphy and the monoline brush. And then depending on how much sort of uneven edges of the paper you want, you can tap on the monoline brush and set the stabilization to something you're happy with. Now I say uneven, it will be nice solid line, but you will end up with a little bit sort of more sort of tremors here and there. So I'm going to set mine to 77% and 34 and hit done. Your alternative option is to set a circle and then adjust it accordingly. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start at the bottom. And we want our circle to run to around about sort of this point here. And likewise, then the according points, off to the sides, etc. So based off of that, I should be around about here at my sort of starting point. And we can get rid of those if we need to. But all I want to do is just sort of run a circle up here. And I want it to not be too perfect or too sort of round in any way. But at the same time, I want it to resemble a circle. So here, for example, when I drag and drop the color into the outer edges, you can go ahead and just grab, say, the eraser, and with the monoline brush set to a similar sort of size, you can go ahead and just go back up in there, erase those edges, and just make some adjustments where you think is necessary. Again, having a few little areas here and there that are not quite, as straight lined or as nice and round as they can be, just adds a little bit more to the kind of crafty look to this design. And you end up with little sort of wobbles in the paper, which I don't think looks bad at all. Down here at the bottom, you don't need to necessarily worry about that too much, because down here we're going to end up blocking stuff off at the bottom. So roughly this is kind of the shape that you want to work with. We can always come back and adjust it. You can always smooth things out where necessary. So I'm just getting in there now where I think I can just maybe make a quick adjustment, sharpen that one up, and the rest all looks fairly good from there. So we're going to go ahead and work with that. We're then going to go ahead and create our sun, so we have our center point. So we're going to go to our layers and create a new layer and drag it underneath our frame. Now I'm calling it a frame because of course it just frames around the outside. Now on this empty layer, we're going to go to our colors and we're going to go ahead and grab this color here. It is the top of the second column from the right. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to draw in a sun. Now for this one, I am going to draw in a circle because I want to give you the actual dimensions as well. So I'm going to go ahead and draw in a circle. It's going to be roughly around about this sort of size, and I'll put my finger on the screen as well to make sure it's a nice perfect circle. So something for scale around about sort of this mark. You're looking almost a tile's height, and drag and drop the color in. And then I need to grab my cursor. I need to move this up in towards sort of a midpoint in this row here. So height wise, that looks pretty okay for a minute. I might need to actually bring that down just a smidge and in fact make it a bit bigger. So let me get that set up and I'll let you know my dimensions, which are 503 by 503 should be, and then we'll tap on our cursor when we're done. Now, I know it's looking like a fried egg at the minute, but what you then want to do is if we set our monoline brush up to something a bit larger, maybe around about 60%, we can just sort of adjust these edges just the same way as we did our frame, just making sure it's not perfect. So it's got that kind of cut out paper look to it. You don't want to sort of maybe have like a perfect circle. Something a little bit edgy will look quite nice. And then we're going to go ahead and simply work from the front all the way to the back, or you can do vice versa, either. So I'm going to start at the very top, create a new layer. I'm going to go to my colors, and we're going to go ahead and start at the very front, making our way backwards. So I'm going to grab this color here in the top of the third column, monoline brush still, probably around about 22%. That looks pretty fine to me in terms of a size. And I'm going to simply go ahead and draw in a little bit of paper along here, and then that goes up on the right. Now you can make that a little bit lower or higher, but you can just drag the color in for a moment. You can grab your cursor, you can use something like warp if you want to, and just maybe just adjust that, bring that down just a tiny bit, and then make sure it also goes off the edge, which it does. And then we're just going to continue to make our way backwards. Now, while we're on this one though, we can create a new layer. We can go ahead and go to our colors, and we can go ahead and grab the color at the top here of the second column, because we can create like a little pathway. So our path is just going to start roughly over here. Now I'm going to make the brush size a bit smaller, down to about 5% this time. I'm just going to start over there, and I'm just going to run in a piece of sort of paper along here, and then I'm going to come along there again. So it's going to get nice and thin back there, and then just allow that to come around into here and drag and drop the color in and get in here, and then just make any tidy ups that we can make. Now what we want to do is we want to go down to the layer underneath the actual dark shape, tap on it and select it. Now it's really important that color fill is grayed out. So we've selected that shape, but if we invert it, so it's selected everything but that dark shape, we can then go ahead and go to our layer, go back up to our path, go to our eraser, and we can just get rid of any excess up here, and then tap on our selection tool. And if you get any little extra bits, you can get rid of it. That way your path nicely matches up to this layer here that we've created. Let's then continue to make our way backwards yet again. So we're going to tap on the frame. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to go to my colors, and we're going to make our way then into some orangey tones. So I'm going to first of all grab this color here on the middle of the fifth column there. I'm going to quickly change my brush. I feel like I just need a little bit more stabilization. So I'm just going to bring that back up just a bit more, just to smooth things out a tiny bit. It doesn't really matter. And then we're going to go ahead and stagger lots of different layers, making our way backwards. So we want to create layer after layer after layer. So the first one, I want to start it sort of down here potentially. And I'm just going to sort of run in a piece of paper up in towards the edge of the screen there. And then all you have to continuously make sure you do is go from your start point all the way off the edge of your little square there of your design, so you can drag and drop the color in. Then go to your layers, tap on your frame, create a new layer. Go to your colors, and we'll grab the top of the fifth column this time. And we'll create another one that's going to run in from roughly around about here. It's going to get a little bit higher on this side, but it's going to be quite a steep one down. But to be honest, you can just create rolling hill after rolling hill, whatever you want to make for your layout, and then let that sort of run in behind. And I've gone all the way off the edge of the canvas. So again, I can drag and drop the color in, of course. And then we'll go to our frame, tap on it, create a new layer, go to our colors. We're going to move into another orange, which is the bottom here of the fifth column. And we're going to create another one that just maybe just peeks its way out here and just makes its way just in behind there. Again, kind of the more layers we can create, the more sort of staggered amount of paper you can create. So you can come in from here, and you can just let that kind of run in, just let that be a little bit different, and just let that come all the way down, all the way off to the edge of the screen, and drag and drop the color in. So always try and build up lots and lots of layers if you can with the paper, because the more you do, the more shadows you have, and the more shadows you have, the more sort of depth you have. Again, let's go down, tap on our frame, create a new layer. Let's then go to our colors, and we can move into these tones. So we're going to start with the darker color at the top of the sixth column. And this one's going to be a little bit smaller. It's going to be just an isolated little hill just in here. So I'm going to go ahead, and I've got to still draw from the edge. I'm going to come in from here, and I'm just going to create like a little bit of a sort of point in there, and just let that run all the way off to the right hand side. And then drag and drop the color in. So I fill in that space every time. I'm going to go to my layers. I'm going to tap on my frame. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to go to my colors, and we'll grab the lighter version this time. This one here, the middle of the sixth column. And we'll start over here again, except this time I want to sort of come in from a little bit higher, a little bit like this, and I want to just sort of nicely just run in behind that one again, all the way off to the right hand side. So of course we can drag and drop our color in. Now I do want to add in some extra little layers in there, in fact. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to tap on this layer here. So this one that we were working on, that slightly darker singular little hill. I'm going to create a new layer and I want it to sit in front of that. And I'm going to go to my colors. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab this color here, the middle of the, that is the middle of the third column. And I'm going to introduce another hill. I just want to introduce an extra one just here. And I want it to sort of run in maybe even a little bit from behind here. So just let's make that come right from the edge. So a little bit higher and just let that kind of just run in down here and then off towards the bottom and then drag and drop the color in. But on the same layer, we can also maybe introduce just an additional sort of little hill that's popping its head out. So let's go ahead and start over on the opposite side. And again, we're trying to just essentially just frame our circle a little bit better. And then again, go all the way down to the edge so you can drag and drop the color in. So these additional little hills, hopefully will just tidy up the corners here of your design and focus, attention a little bit more towards the center area. Now at this point of the design, we actually need to go ahead now and start to layer things inside the frame, not in front. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to tap on our sun this time. So we're going to tap on our sun, create a new layer. So that'll be the new rule. So we tap on the sun, create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab the top of that's the top of the 7th column now. And we're going to tap away. We're going to come in from the right hand side and just create like a little kind of hillside in here almost. So like a very small one. And I like the really small layers here and there. So I'm drawing as we speak. And I'm just going to sort of create like little sort of additional hills in here and then let that run off to the side. And again, drag and drop my color in. You can always go back to any layer though, as always, and tweak it as much as you like. Let's go down, tap on our sun, create a new layer. Go to your colors. We're going to go to the bottom color here in the 7th column. So the bottom of the 7th column. And we'll create a hill that's going to come in from the side here. It's just going to sort of dip in behind there. So I want to sort of come from over here. I want to be a little kind of sort of steeper little point, and then maybe it has a secondary little point on it, and then it runs away off to the left hand side as always, and drag and drop your color in. So we've got this additional layer now, and everything's now starting to sit inside the frame. Let's then go ahead and go to our layers, tap on our sun, create a new layer, go to your colors, grab the middle color now in the 7th column. And then this one's going to be a little bit different. We're going to go ahead and create quite a sharp, pointed, angular style, like it's just a corner of a piece of paper. If you could make it a right angle, that'd be sweet, but you don't necessarily have to. Now I'm going to go ahead and start just here, and I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to hold my pen, draw a line off to the edge of the canvas like so. And then using that point, I'm going to go ahead and go from the very tip of it and draw a line out, hold my pen down so it's a nice straight line, and then I can decide when the angle should stop. And I want it to somewhat sit just quite sort of, it's in the center of our sun almost. So I'm going to drag that down to there and then drag and drop the color into that space. We're going to move into some pinky purple tones. So let's tap on our sun, create a new layer, go to your colors. We're going to go ahead then and grab the bottom of the 3rd column from the right now. And we'll draw in yet again another little hillside. So we're going to start out here, except you can make this one quite sharp and angular, or you could make it rounded and fluffy. It's totally up to you. And we want to run it into kind of this point here. So I'm going to start over here, and I'm going to create kind of a almost kind of softer points maybe, other than that last one. I go all the way off to the edge and drag and drop our color in. Again, let's go to our layers, tap on our sun, create a new layer, go to your colors. We're going to go ahead and grab the top of the 3rd column from the right. And we're going to create yet again another angular kind of point of a sort of mountain top almost. So I'm going to start just here. So around about there and draw in a line, hold my pen down off to the edge of the screen. And then I'm going to go ahead and go from the very top point here. So I'm going to tap on it, hold on it, drag down, and then drag that to an angle that I'm happy with. And I want it to sort of drop in behind here. And you can always tap up here and go to the line option and zoom right in here and just make sure that these points just nicely run into each other. It's a nice little easy trick, that one. Tap away when you're done and then drag and drop the color into that space. We'll go to our layers. We'll tap on our sun and we will create another new layer. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to go ahead and grab the middle color in the 3rd column from the right. And we're going to add in a single final hill that's going to sit just over here and somewhat higher than the last one we were working with. So roughly around about here, I'm going to draw in a line off the side of the screen, pick an angle that I'm happy with, and that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw in a line off of that all the way down. Hold your pen down, and you want it to cover up the base of the sun, definitely. So I've gone all the way off to the edge of the screen there, so I can drag and drop the color in, and that nicely should house my sun in a nice little spot there. And then you could move the sun and pick and choose how you want it to go. We're going to keep making our way backwards though, except this time we're going to go ahead and start creating layers underneath. So we're going to need to go ahead and tap on our sun and create a new layer and drag it underneath the sun this time. So we do have to do this little drag motion now. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to start building in the sky. And I want the sky to be layered paper too. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go to our middle color here in the far right column. I'm going to tap away. I'm going to go ahead and grab my selection tool this time and rectangle. Tap on color fill to turn it blue and turn it on. And then you can just create staggered paper in the background. So I can draw a big rectangle that makes its way all the way across the screen, roughly to around about say here. Tap on our selection tool when we're done. I'm going to go ahead and go to my layers quickly and change my background color to the one here at the bottom right of the palette. Hit done. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to create another new layer. So now it can sit above that pink one we just created, and go to my colors. And I'm going to grab the color in the top right of the palette. Go to my selection tool again and draw in another rectangle that's going to then give me a sort of top row there of blue, and let go and tap on my selection tool when we're done. Now you can blend these colors together if you wanted to, or you can leave it as sort of additional layers of staggered paper. But for now, we're going to go ahead and leave it as this. So we've got all of the sort of sky shapes. We only need to go ahead and create one more new layer. So we're going to create a new layer, go to your colors, and we're going to go ahead and create some clouds. And your clouds can be, for example, let's say the bottom of the second column there. And they just need to be very, very, very simple shapes. So over here on the right, I'm going to go ahead and just tap and draw in a line across. It doesn't have to go to the edge of the screen. I'm just drawing it all the way across just in case. And it's a nice straight line. And then I can just create some really simple roundy shapes in here, off to the edge and all the way off to the right hand side, and then drag and drop the color in. And I've got a nice floating cloud. And you could stagger these. You could make them smaller at the front, larger at the back. It's totally up to you what you want to do. You don't have to abide by that though. I'm going to draw in another line here. Just going to go off the sort of frame a little bit and pop my finger on the screen to make sure it's a nice straight line. I want all my paper clouds to have a little bit of a sort of a nice straight line bottom edge. And all I'm doing is going all the way around to my end point and dragging and dropping the color in. So I've got some nice staggered clouds. You could always go ahead if you want to and grab your selection tool, turn off color fill, and you could always make a selection round the cloud, for example. Grab your cursor and maybe scale it down using the uniform option if you want to get that nice staggered effect with the small to large clouds. That's just a little pointer for you. Just going to fill in a little gap there. I've got a little bit of a dot. I'm going to continue with that fashion. So I'm going to see that cloud there. I'm going to go ahead and draw in another straight line here, a little bit lower this time. And I'm going to create a nice smaller, just fluffy, rounded shape. And again, drag and drop the color in. That's nice and small, nice and staggered. We'll go ahead and we'll draw in another one here, all the way across. I'll put my finger on the screen as well to make sure it's a nice straight line. And I'll create another one. Now I want this to be a little bit smaller than that one. So I just know that that's kind of my rules over there. I don't want to go any larger than that one. Go all the way off and then round to my end point. So again, I can drag and drop that color in. And one final cloud at the very top. Now we'll just go ahead and give a little bit of a gap where the overlap of all the colors will be. So I'm going to draw in a straight line there. And we'll make this one a little bit larger here at the top. Just nice, rounded, straightforward shapes, you know, almost childlike shapes. And there you go, you've got your clouds. And you could always, again, use that selection option that I showed you a second ago and make things smaller. What I am doing here is I'm just going to draw in a straight line again, just to extend that and just create a little bit more of a nice trail off, just so it matches the rest of the aesthetic of the rest of the clouds. They've got these lovely little sort of tapers right on the end. Now that is it in terms of creating all the shapes. The next step is to go ahead and add in the textures. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create two new layers at the very top. We'll swipe from left to right on both and we'll group these together and we'll rename the group and we will call this texture. And this is going to hopefully bring all of your different sort of layers together with a nice sort of paper overlay. Now the first one, we're going to go ahead and go to the top layer here out of the two. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go to our colors and we're going to double tap on the left hand side of the disk to select perfect middle grey, and we'll drag and drop the colour into the screen. We're going to go up to our adjustments and we're going to go to the option of noise. We're going to swipe from left to right until you see at the top there the noise percentage goes up to 7%. And then the only change is we're just going to change the turbulence to about 76%. And then once you've done that, you can then go ahead and tap on your adjustments when you're done, and you've got this nice grey layer. So you're probably thinking, Joel, what do we do with this? Well, we need to set a blend mode on it. We're going to go to the layer. We're going to tap on the layers blend mode, and we're going to change it to the option of hard light. Now, I want to explain why I'm doing that, because if you now zoom in, paper doesn't have a perfect texture all the time. It has varying sort of speckles of different color in it. So the noise now should hopefully give it a little bit more realism. But of course we want to add in the actual paper texture on top as well. So this empty layer that we have here, what we need to go ahead and do is we need to go to a website now and grab a stock image of some paper texture. Now in the description down below, I've provided you with a link to this unsplash.com image of some black and white paper texture. Now you can download it, or you can hold down on it and literally just copy the image and paste it into Procreate. So you go copy image, you go back to Procreate and swipe down with 3 fingers, you go to paste. Now, if you want the actual full quality version, just so you can make sure you get all of the nice little grain textures in here, you need to go to the option of download and then hit download and save it to your files wherever you may have saved it to. So pick where you want to save it to in your files. You can go to the option of download down here and then go to the option here of open in, and you want to go ahead and open it in your files or in your downloads. If I was to tap open in, I can see here that I can go to the option here of open in downloads, which means it's simply saved in my downloads folder for Google Chrome. And then I can go ahead and go back to Procreate. I can go ahead and go to my actions. I go to the option of add, and I can insert a file, insert from file. So I can go ahead and tap on that. If I go to the option of Chrome, and I can see here that I now have the image nicely saved. So you may need to go ahead and go to on your iPad and then Chrome, but I've got Chrome there on the left hand side. And you can then go ahead and tap on the image. It will drop it in full scale, full quality, and all you need to do is drag out the far right node using the uniform option, and then drag out the far left node using the uniform option, and then tap on your cursor when you're done. And now you have this wicked texture which has all these lovely little details in there. Now we need to bring those details out a little bit more. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of the yellowy tone in there. So I'm going to go up to my adjustments. I'm going to go to adjustments and hue, saturation and brightness, bring that saturation down to none. And then we can go ahead and tap on our adjustments when we're done. We're then going to go ahead and go to our adjustments again, and we're going to go to curves this time. You want to make sure you're on the gamma rating, and you just need to bring this bottom node here across just ever so slightly beyond the halfway mark until you get to around about this, and you should see the image now start to get a little bit darker. But tap on your adjustments when you're done. And then we just need to go to the layer, tap on the layer and change its blend mode to the option of soft light, and then tap away. And now all of your paper now should start to have this wonderful texture along with the noise. You should be able to see all of that awesome information in our layers. But of course, if we want to make this actually turn into something really quite dramatic and intriguing to look at, we want to make it nice and 3D. So that moves us on to step 3 of this, which is then going to be the shadows part of it. So you want to make sure really at this point you're happy with your layout and you're happy with how all of your sort of hills, etc. look. I'm going to make one very quick minor tweak, which is if I go to my adjustments and liquify and I go to the option of push, I'm going to bring this hill a little bit more over this corner, a little bit more like this, and maybe make it into a bit more of a point at the top, just a little bit higher, just so it matches across, and then tap on my adjustments when we're done. So let's go ahead and add in our shadows. Now you can at this point go up to your actions. You can also go to canvas and turn off your drawing guide. We don't need the grid on necessarily at this point. So we're going to go ahead and let's simply start at the top and make our way backwards. So the first thing I need you to do is go up to your colors, and I need you to grab this color here at the top of the third column. Now that's going to be our shadow color. Now we're going to repeat the same step over and over again. So if you get fed up of hearing my sort of voice, you can always skip ahead. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to this layer here. So this is our path. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. And then making sure you tap on the bottom one out of the two. This particular one, we're going to tap on it and change the blend mode to the option of overlay. And then grab your color and just drag it down into the space of the shape. You won't see any visual change on this one right now. But if we go up to our adjustments and we go to the option of Gauge and Blur, And we swipe anywhere up to 6, but 3 to 6 is fine. If I go to 4, for example, you should now just about be able to see a very, very minor shadow under there. And what we're going to do is we're going to tap on our cursor every time. We're going to go to the option of warp, and you can now have a real play with how the shadows all sit in your design. So go to the option of warp. Now my lighting is going to come from the right hand side across, so I can add shadows under these edges here, but not so much on the left. So if we imagine this piece of paper now is stacked on top of the blue one underneath, well, what we can do is we can get rid of the shadow here a little bit, because there wouldn't necessarily be one. And I can exaggerate this one. I could drag it out like this if I wanted to kind of show that this paper is really curled up, for example. But the less sort of dramatic ones I think look quite good. So you could sort of bring it here. And I also think a very, really good trick to make this really stand out is occasionally, because paper's flat, if you were to lay flat on flat, you're not going to end up with a really deep shadow here. So like for here, for example, where I can see it's running over the edge, I'm going to bring that shadow down. I think it looks really, really quite realistic in a way if when you have certain edges of your shadow barely visible, like they touch the edge of this design. So I've got a little bit of shadow here, it kind of nips in a little bit here, and then it just sticks out a tiny bit here at the bottom right, bottom left. And I can keep tweaking that, come back to it. Likewise over here, because I'm imagining the light coming across, I wouldn't really necessarily drag a shadow out there too much, but you can a little bit. But tap on your cursor when you're done. And all of this is a process, and you don't want to sort of dramatize some of the shadows. The only one that's going to be really dramatic is this frame. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to repeat all the way down. So we're going to now really boost up our layer count. So essentially all you need to remember is every single shape has then an extra shadow layer underneath. So for example, we're going to go ahead to the next layer, which you can see is this big dark area here. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Tap on the bottom one. Tap on its blend mode immediately and drag it all the way to the very bottom, this time down to lumosity. Every single one from this point on will have lumosity set. And then drag the color from the top right. So tap away, drag the color into this space. You won't see any visual change, but make sure you then go to your adjustments, go to Gaussian blur, pick a percentage that you are happy with. So I'm going to go up to maybe something around about 5% this time. And you should have seen that shadow then pop in. Go to your cursor, use the warp tool, and let's just have some fun dragging these around. So you could create a bit of a shadow here on the right. Again, you want to abide by the rules of where the light's coming from. So maybe it's a light that's maybe here, and maybe it then sort of shoots down, and you could create sort of angles off, like here, for example. I can drag out a bit of a shadow maybe there. I can maybe create a very small one in behind there. But because the light's coming across this way, you're not going to get too much of a shadow on this side because it's just probably hitting the edge of the paper. So you can just drag that out the tiniest little bit, and maybe, just maybe at the top here, you just drag that out enough to just add in another little shadow there off the top. I really do believe less is more in this instance. So try not to be too sort of over the top with the shadows yet. You can always go back and make them bigger, as I always say. So we've added in a little bit of a shadow here. We're getting some depth to it. Let's move to the next one. Swipe it to the left. Duplicate it, tap on the bottom one and change its blend mode to lumosity, and drag the color into the shape that we're working on, which is this one here. Go to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, pick a percentage between 3 and 6. I'm going to go to 4% this time. Tap on my cursor. Using the warp option, I can now pick where I want my shadows to be. I'm going to tuck some in so they're right up against the edge. But because this one's kind of facing this way, you maybe can get a good strong shadow out of this one. Curl it round, maybe push it this way, but then bring these edges down. So again, you only have like certain areas with a bit of shadow, nothing too crazy, nothing too sort of mad here and there. So that one's got a nice drag to it there. I think I might also drag out a tiny bit above, but just keep pushing it around. You could always use liquify in the push effect as well if you want to. And I think that looks really good. I'm going to tap on my cursor when I'm done again. Less is more, I think. Let's then go down, swipe it to the left, duplicate it, tap on the layer, change the blend mode from normal to the option of lumosity, and drag the color into that space. Go up to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, swipe from left to right. I'm going to pick 3% this time, a nice small shadow, and then tap on my cursor so I can use the warp tool, and I can maybe sort of expand it a little bit, maybe down in this little gap down here. That brings out a little bit of a shadow there. That looks okay. Let's move that one a tiny bit outwards. You do want a bit of depth, but again, the ones that, again, I keep saying, sitting behind look really, really good. It makes it really quite believable as well. So a little something like that maybe. Now it's nice and minimal, nothing too much. I'm going to tap on my cursor when I'm done. And I don't skip ahead necessarily in my tutorial, so all I'm going to do is just keep going through the steps with you as we go. So we're now down to the next hill. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Tap on the bottom one, change its blend mode from normal to luminosity, and drag your color into that space. Go up to your adjustments, Gaussian blur. Maybe we'll give this one a larger, say 5% Gaussian blur, maybe even 6. And then we'll tap on our cursor and we'll use the warp tool to decide where we think our shadows are going to sit. So I could maybe move this one a little bit higher, maybe add in a little bit more of a shadow there, and maybe a little bit higher over on that left hand side. We could maybe imagine potentially that the lighting's coming from maybe here, like in this bottom right corner. So as it shoots and hits these areas here, we could maybe factor that in. Let's see what we can come up with, but just a little bit of a shadow in behind there. Now this one stands out nicely. We'll go to our layers, we'll go down a layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, tap on it, change the blend mode from normal to luminosity, and drag the color into the space of the hills, and these two are on the same layer. So now when I go to my adjustments and Gaussian blur, I just need to remember that they're both there and going to be blurred. So I'm going to go up to around about 4% this time. Grab my cursor, zoom in, let's go ahead and adjust it on this side. And because this one on the right, we can really sort of exaggerate a shadow necessarily because it's like right close to where our light source is potentially. And over here too, like having peaks on the top of your little areas of paper here really do help. And again, it's a little bit on the inside is not a crime because it all then helps the paper stand off from, each side, it helps it stand off from the layer underneath. And tap on your cursor when you're done and look at how that 3D effect's coming together. Let's go in our layers, let's go down a layer. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it and tap on the bottom one. Go to the blend mode and change your blend mode all the way down to luminosity. Now, if you haven't skipped ahead and you haven't actually gone ahead and muted me at this point, let the people know in the comments a secret word that'll throw everybody off. So you can now drop a comment in the comment section down below and let's pick something weird. Let's go for the words space potato. So comment down below with the word space potato and I'll know that you have not skipped ahead, you've not muted me, and we've done this together. So space potato. So this layer here, you then just need to go ahead and drag the color into the space of the hill, which is actually this one here. Go to my adjustments, Gaussian blur, and we'll swipe from left to right. Let's go in for let's go for a 5% this time. Grab my cursor and zoom in and just move that shadow just a bit off to the left hand side. You can even drag it a bit higher if you really wish. And yeah, I think I'm going to go for a pretty steep one there. Tap on my cursor when I'm done. Now, your angle of lighting is very critical because we've got lots of things at the bottom here. If you sort of set your lighting at the bottom, you could get a really good shadow. But because we have this frame, I also want to add a good shadow to that. We don't want to lose that option. So kind of like over here on the right just gives you enough shadow angles. These ones on the left, their shadows can't be that steep. Whereas over here on the right, these ones can be nice and quite shadowy, which is going to give you kind of a nice sort of blend between the shadows from left to right. Now let's go down a layer again. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Tap on it. Tap on its blend mode and change it to luminosity. And let's drag the color into the space of that layer. Go to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, and I'm going to go to anywhere 4% this time. Tap on my cursor when I'm done. Now the percentage, by the way, is completely random. There is no sort of logic to it in that sense. You just need to go ahead and just blur it out a little bit. And then tap on your cursor when you're done, when you've moved it all around. Let's then go to the frame now. So this is where things get a little bit sort of different. We're going to swipe the frame to the left in a sense and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, tap on it and change your blend mode, of course, to luminosity. And making sure you tap on that layer, you drag the color into the frame. We're going to go to our adjustments. We're going to go to Gaussian blur, and I'm going to go up to a large percentage. I think you can get away with something a little bit bigger here. It's up to you what you want to do and try a few different percentages. I think we could go up to something maybe around about 10 on this occasion. And then we can tap on our cursor when we're done. And just like before, we'll warp it, except now we're really working with the edge of quite a high layer. So just factor that in. And then maybe over here you get like a very slim amount of shadow, if any. Same kind of rules apply. We could maybe bring in the shadow here at the bottom as well, just adding some darkness underneath there. But again, I always want those little areas where maybe we can go ahead and sort of get the shadow kind of close. In certain areas, maybe it points out a little bit further. what I really recommend we do is if we tap on our cursor when you've got like a rough gauge like this, then go to your adjustments and go to liquefy. Use the push option here. Set the size to something you're happy with in terms of size. That's probably a little bit too big. Let's drop that down to around about sort of 35. And then you can just move the shadow around a little bit. So I could, move this, make it a bit tighter to the edge up there potentially, and kind of just run that along that top edge and leave this one here to really sort of anchor out almost, really stick out, and then tuck it back in underneath, a little bit here and there, and just sort of just play with it and just see what you can come up with and see what areas you can maybe exaggerate. Maybe I could bring that across and just have this little point sticking out, which I think looks pretty cool. Let's bring that down a tiny bit though underneath, so that one's not on its own too much. But a nice good shadow under here will really sort of give you a lot more depth to it. You could always go ahead, once you've sort of adjusted it, go to your uniform option and scale it down in size a bit more potentially, like here. So you've done all your movements, you're just exaggerating it a bit more. I'm going to undo that though. Just wanted to show you the option. We may come back to it. So let's go into our layers. Let's go down a layer again, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Tap on the bottom one, tap on its blend mode and change it to luminosity, and drag the color into whatever shapes it is. And it's these two little hills here. We'll go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, swipe from left to right. Let's add in a 4%, grab our cursor, go back to the warp option because I just changed to uniform, and we'll move our shadows off a little bit more here. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to move those and make them a bit more dramatic. That looks cool. We'll go to our layers. We'll go up a layer, or down, shall I say. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Tap on the bottom one, tap on its blend mode and scroll all the way to the bottom to luminosity and drag your color into that space. Go to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, swipe from left to right. Let's go to around about a 4%. No, actually, let's make it a bit bigger. Let's go a bit braver this time. Let's go 6%. Grab your cursor. Again, you can always use the liquefy as well if that's something you feel like you want to try. I'm going to move these points across. I'm going to tuck some in underneath so certain bits stick out and certain bits don't. I think that's where the real fun of this effect comes to life a bit more. And then tap on my cursor when I'm done. Let's go down a layer again. Got this big triangle shape over here. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two. Change its blend mode from normal to the option of luminosity. And then we're going to go ahead and grab our color, dragging it in. We'll go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right. Let's do something quite sort of low. I'm going to go for a 3% this time. In fact, let's go a bit bigger. Let's go up to the actual maximum 6%. Change my mind. Let's then go to my cursor and let's drag that one off to the left hand side. And you can really stagger these larger ones back here if you want, but also maybe just bring in a little bit of a shadow down here, just a little something there just to separate it from the layer in behind. And you can always grab the point up here and peel that backwards a little bit more and tuck it just like that. And tap on your cursor when you're done. And look how much 3D depth we're getting. I always love these paper designs when they get to this stage. So again, duplicate the layer. Tap on the bottom one, change blend mode to luminosity, drag the color from the top right into the space, go up to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, going to go up to 3% this time, grab my cursor in the warp tool, and we're just going to move these peaks. And that's all I'm going to do. That actually looks really sweet. They're just nicely standing off. I'll tap on my cursor when I'm done. Let's go to our layers. Down a layer again, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two. Blend mode to luminosity, and we'll go ahead and drag our color into that space. Grab your adjustments and Gaussian blur and zoom in, and let's blur this one out to, let's go to 5%. Grab my cursor. I'm going to move it off to the left again so I get that nice depth effect, maybe even a little bit lower. You can really space them out. You can get quite brave. I wouldn't go too far, but you can get quite brave. Just pushing those shadows quite far distance away just to create some really cool extra depth. And then I've got my pink mountain now on the right. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Bottom one out the two. Drag the color into that space. Grab your adjustments and Gaussian blur and swipe from left to right. So let's go 4% this time. Let's go ahead and grab, in fact, I'm going to go larger simply because we've got the sun in front. So we can cast a larger shadow across on it potentially. So I'm going to go 6%. Grab my cursor and I'm just going to move it across. I'm going to tuck it in a little bit though. And to be honest, I've always said less is more. I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to let the peak have a nice shadow, but I'm going to tuck it right up against that line and tap on my cursor when I'm done. We're still going. We've got the sun to go. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Tap on the bottom one. Change the blend mode, of course, to luminosity. And drag your color into that space. Now go to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right. I'm going to go up to around about 5% this time. Now the only exception with the sun is I'm imagining it's right at the back, it's laying on some other flat areas of paper. So the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tap on my adjustments, I'm going to tap on my cursor and the warp tool, and I'm going to try my best to really tuck this shadow right up against the edge in most cases, maybe a little bit more off to the left if at all, just so that I can really sort of flatten it, hopefully, down to the other layers underneath. So it's really, you know, we've kind of hit hit the table, maybe, you know, whatever it is that this is all on surface wise. And it doesn't need anything grand. It just needs to have a really kind of flat shadow. Or you can do something a bit more sort of grand and move it off to the side. It's totally up to you what you want to do. You know, you could do something like that. So it's got a good amount of depth to it. I think in fact, now I've seen both, I might do a little bit of both. So this right side is nice and tight, but then I just want to give a tiny bit more on that left side. In my initial practices, I actually had a much larger shadow on that side. That's wicked. So let's go down to our layers. We've got our clouds. Again, same principle. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Tap on the bottom one this time though, and tap on it and alpha lock it. Tap on it and fill it, and then tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. And of course, don't forget to change the blend mode from normal to luminosity. We're going to go up to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and I'm only going to blur these out a little bit. I'm going to go up to 3%. Now, one thing I recommend we do immediately with the clouds is if we tap on our cursor, we go ahead and use the uniform option and we just move them a tiny bit off to the left. Just a tiny bit off to the left, and tap on your cursor when you're done. Because you then really should go to your adjustments and liquefy and use the push option, because these are all on the same layer. Every time you made a sort of adjustment with the warp tool to 1, you're going to end up adjusting all of them. So use the push tool this time. I'm going to set that a lot smaller, probably down to about sort of 20%. I'm going to tuck that shadow right up underneath there. Maybe it's a bit larger over here on the right hand side, and I can tuck the shadow, you know, in on the points. I can pick and choose now exactly where I want those little shadows to appear, reappear, you know, anything like that. You can drag out a few if you want to make them nice and dramatic, or you can just, you know, just tuck them in, see what you want to do. I really like that the bottom line also gets like almost no shadow. You know, here, those two are almost completely flush, but then this side over here just for some reason just warps up a little bit, and I think that's cool. That's what paper would do when it staggers on top of itself. Let's then do the same. So I'm going to tuck it up under here, tuck that one there, and then that one looks pretty good over there. I think we can leave that. I'm just going to tuck it up a little bit more under here too. So we've got a little bit of a shadow under there. I'm going to tuck that one under there. That looks pretty good. I'm going to move this one out. I'm going to be a bit more dramatic with that side over there, but I'm going to push it down at the top just to compress it, not to get too big with the blurs. Again, I'm imagining the lighting's almost coming across. I'm going to tuck that right underneath there, but maybe we just get a little bit braver and we bring those two down a little bit. Show some unevenness to the shadows because the paper's maybe uneven. So again, flatten it down at the top a little bit more. Tuck it in under there. Definitely tuck it in underneath. And let's bring that one a bit closer. Lovely stuff. That looks wicked. Nice in 3D. And then tap on your adjustments when you're done. Now if we go to our layers, we now have just the pieces of paper in the back. So all we need to do is duplicate the blue one, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Again, grab your layer, change the blend mode from normal to luminosity. And again, grab your color and drag it into there. Go to your adjustments, go to Gaussian blur and swipe from left to right. And probably something quite small, maybe around about 4%. And then tap on your adjustments when you're done. Now make the decision. Are you happy with how that looks? You could literally leave it. Or you could do exactly what we just did a second ago using adjustments and liquefy. We can make this nice and big because we've got a nice big space now to work with, so around about 50%. You could tuck it up under certain areas and maybe reveal it under other areas. So bring it down, you know, on the sides, but tuck it up in the middle. I think that looks wicked, so I'm going to leave it exactly like that. And then we just need to do the same for the final layer of the paper. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Tap on the bottom one, blend mode, luminosity, and go to your color, drag it into that space. Adjustments, we're going to go to Gaussian blur. We're going to swipe from left to right, add in, let's do 4%. tap on your adjustments when you're done. I'm going to tap on my adjustments again and go to liquefy. I'm going to use the push option. I'm going to tuck it up under here. I'm going to bring it down again a little bit on the edge. I'm going to maybe bring it down a little bit just under here, just a tiny bit. It's very subtle. And then maybe a little bit just there. Again, just to show the unevenness of the paper, and tap on your adjustments when you're done. Look at these awesome effects that we've got, how it all just nicely layers on top. So the next stage of this part of the design is to go ahead and add in some gradients, almost some variation to the paper and its colors. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go through all of the layers in terms of the paper and just vary up some colors. So we've got the top layer here of our path. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and tap on it. You want to alpha lock it. You want to go to your colors. I'm going to grab, say, the middle color here in the second column. The brush wants to be set to airbrushing, and the soft brush, I'm going to set the brush size to something quite low, maybe around about sort of 6%, and just very lightly just pick sort of a space, and then maybe just sort of darken that up a tiny bit, and then maybe a little bit at the top up there too. Just variations in the paper. It's very, very subtle, but some of the other areas won't be. So now if we go to our layers, we go down to the next shape. That's all we needed to do. We tap on the next shape down, dark hills, tap on it, alpha lock it. We're going to go to our colors. I'm going to go ahead and grab this color at the bottom of the third column. And I'm going to introduce some brighter tones. I'm going to bring that size up to around about 16%. The size is not sort of critical. I'm going to blend in a bit of a brighter spot over there on the right hand side. And then maybe I'll even sort of brighten up maybe that top edge there. Just some variation and change in the paper. Keep it light. You don't have to go too mad with it. You don't want something like that. You want to just keep it light, nice and subtle will always be better. And then keep going down. So I've got the next one. It's the bright orange hill. I'm going to tap on it, alpha lock it, go to my colors. I'm going to go ahead and I'll grab the dark color at the top of the fifth column. Essentially, all I'm doing is picking a variation from the column that it sits in. So it's got this bright orange and it sits in the fifth column. I'm just picking either a lighter tone or a darker tone and just having some fun. So I'm going to grab the top one of the fifth column. So essentially, I'm urging you to sort of do what you want with it, really. If I bring that size down, maybe 10%, I'm just going to darken up a tiny bit in there, and maybe even a little bit at the top, just a tiny bit in there. And you could always grab the other tone if you want to, dual tone it. So grab this one here at the bottom of the fifth column and maybe just brighten up a little patch here and there. Again, really nice and light will be better. Just shows again that the paper is not completely flat. So we go down a layer, we tap on it, we alpha lock it. It's the one on the left. We'll go ahead and I'll keep the same color. I've got the bottom of that column and I'm going to go ahead and just lightly introduce a lighter tone on that top edge. Lovely stuff, keeping it nice and subtle. And I think I'll leave it like that. Go down to the next layer, tap on it, alpha lock it. I'm going to go to my colors. I'm going to grab the brighter orange this time, so the middle of that fifth column. And then maybe a little bit more towards the bottom and the back end over here. I'm just going to brighten that up with a bit of a brighter orange tone. Just nice and subtle variations and changes. Let's go down a layer, tap on it, alpha lock it. So we've got the blue mountain hill. So we go to our layers now. Now I used this color here in the middle of that third column. So I'll just reuse those colors. So I'll grab the bottom of the third column. Brush size about 11% this time. I'm just going to brighten up a tiny bit on the edge of that paper. And I think I'll brighten up the right side a little bit as well. Over here. Very, very subtle. Let's go down. Tap on the next one, alpha lock it. Go to your colors. We used these colors here, so I've used the darker one. I'll have to use the lighter one in the middle of the sixth column there, and we'll just brighten up this edge here. We'll go ahead and we'll move across, so we'll go to our layers, tap on the next one down, tap on it and alpha lock it. I'm going to go to the darker color now, the top of the sixth column, and again just sort of vary up that paper effect a little bit more. Let's then move to our frame. Now the frame's slightly different. We'll go ahead and we'll tap on it and we'll alpha lock it. We'll go to our colors and we're going to grab the darker tone first of all at the bottom of the first column. We'll set this nice and large because we've got a huge area to work with. And I've got it set to something around about sort of 35%. And we're just going to sort of darken up this left edge over here a bit more. Maybe a little bit underneath the paper in this bottom right area here. Very subtle again. And then go to your colors and grab the top color in that first column and brighten up maybe the top right edge up here and bring that maybe a little bit across. Let them sort of overlap each other, but just a little bit brighter in that top right. Again, hopefully now to show that that lighting is coming from this right side, brightening up the paper. This left side's a bit darker, And then now that kind of makes you understand the shadows a bit more and why they are where they are. So let's go down in our layers. We've now got the hills a little bit further back. Now this is somewhat optional. You don't have to do every single one. You don't even have to do any of them. I'm going to skip this little tiny one here because it is quite a small area. I'm going to go down to the next layer, which is that one there. Tap on it, alpha lock it. It's the more saturated out of the three. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have to pick something, say this middle one here in that 7th column. Bring the brush size down. So I've just alpha locked it. And now I'm just going to brighten up maybe a little edge or two here. I could even darken it, sorry, and maybe change that up. Just darkening up the edge of the paper. Again, I don't want it to be too sort of strong though. So I'm undoing those initial colors and maybe just seeing what looks okay. And if it doesn't look like it needs any, we don't have to add it. Just as simple as that, really. We're going to go ahead and we're going to move down to this hilltop over here on the left. We're going to tap on it. We're going to alpha lock it. We're going to go to our colors. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab the darker tone again at the top of that 7th column. Brush size about 20% almost. It doesn't matter what the brush size is. I'm just lightly now just adding a bit of a shadow towards the bottom end of the paper. We're going to go to our layers. I've got a pink hillside on the right, so I'm going to tap on it, alpha lock it, go to my colors. We could go ahead and we're using, I believe, this color here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the lighter tone, the middle color in the 3rd column from the right. 8% this time brush size, and I'm just going to brighten up a tiny bit on the top of the paper. Let's move across. So we're going to grab this one here, tap on it, alpha lock it. I'm going to keep the brighter tone. So it's this one here. I'm just going to very lightly go down that edge of the paper. And that one at the back, I'm going to leave it. Everything else in the background area in terms of the clouds and the paper, I'm going to completely leave. I'm really happy with how that looks. Now the final stage of this paper cutout design is to give the paper on the edges anyway a little bit more sort of color and a little bit more of an edge effect. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to work out which ones we want to do, and it's the same kind of principle. Just start at the top and pick which ones you do or do not want to do. So the top one, we've got the path here. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab let's grab a lighter tone, so the bottom of that 2nd column. Our brush now changes and it goes into the option here of the hard brush. The brush size will be probably nice and small, maybe around about 3%, because all we need to do now is sort of go down the edge of the paper really lightly, but vary up your pressure. You can press really firm and you should be able to just give your paper a little bit of a crease, essentially right on the edge. You could add like a little bit over here because I've got a shadow in behind it. I could press and add one on there. Subtle, keep it subtle. And then you can switch between whatever is the lightest in that column and what is the darkest. So I can also grab this color here, the middle of the 2nd column. And I can maybe sort of run this along here. And I don't have to necessarily keep to the edge. I can let that run in. See how subtle that is and how it just makes its way in. And to me, that just makes it look like the paper has a crease of sort to it. And I'm going to leave it exactly like that. I don't need to do any more. I don't need to do any less. I'm going to go to my layers now. I'm going to go down, grab that blue hillside. It's already alpha locked, of course. So we're going to go to our colors. I'm going to grab the lightest tone first of all. So the bottom of the 2nd column there. Lighting's coming across. Not that that really matters, but you can be really light now with just adding in a little edge on there. You can press really firm in certain areas. You can add in little tiny slithers of adjustment here on the edge. And this might hopefully help your paper have lots and lots of sort of separation. It's not sort of critical to add in a lot. You can sort of go over it a couple of times if you want with like lighter overlays, because you can really layer this brush up. You can really layer it on top of itself. And then here, I'm going to come down the edge of the paper just a tiny, tiny bit over here. And I think we'll keep it at that. Again, I keep saying the word, but it's really subtle. Let's go down to the orange. We'll go to that column. So let's go ahead and let's grab, say, for instance, the lighter one first of all. Sometimes you only need the lighter tone, like I did with the blue area. And you can just work out where you want to maybe just add in that little tiny additional detail on that top edge. And it may not come out sometimes, so then you can go ahead and go, right, well, I'll switch to the shadow color at the top of that column. So top of the 5th one for me now. And I can go ahead and maybe just introduce like a bit of a darker fold in the paper. You know, a little something like that. And maybe another one down here in the corner. So I can really kind of work that out, see what I like the look of. And it's really cool. I just think it looks wicked. We'll go down a layer. We'll go to our colors, grab the highlight tone for that area, the bottom of that column now for this area over here, because the light's coming across from the right. Maybe it does hit certain edges a little bit brighter than, you know, the other side. So we can maybe think about either brightening them up a lot or just a little, just something nice and, you guessed it, subtle. Right, let's go down a layer. I promise that's the last time I say it, I hope. Let's tap on that layer. Let's go to our colors. Let's maybe grab the shadow color for it, the top of the 5th column there. And maybe we just add in some shadow variations. Now, again, it's not really critical either that you do everywhere. You know, you can leave this with just simply, you know, whatever's on that layer. You do not need to add it absolutely everywhere. Let's go to the blue one. Let's tap on it. Let's go to our colors. Let's grab the brighter tone. Now I'm going to grab the brighter tone here at the bottom of the 3rd column. I'm going to go along this edge over here, and I'm going to make this one a bit more of a signature one. So it's going to be a bit brighter. I'm going to try to just add in a little bit more on that edge. And then maybe like a tiny little one over here. Let's do the same over on this side. So a little bit larger this time. And then a little one maybe on the back. But I can let that come down a little bit more. And you can always like run like across a corner, for example, like that. Again, it's just variations in the paper and how it's maybe creased or folded, whatever. Again, as I say quite a lot, if you can come up with a reasonable story for it, that's all that matters. Let's then go ahead and go down a layer. Again, we're going to slowly start to think about, do we pick and choose? So I'm now in the sort of brighter tone. So I've got the middle color here in the 6th column. And I'm just going to add in a little bit on this edge. But you don't want it to run, you know, nice and bright in towards a shadow, like, or underneath a shadow. So just leave it. This next one I'm going to leave. And I'm going to jump quite far back to maybe even that large triangle there. So this one here. I'm going to go to my colors. I'm going to grab the brighter tone at the bottom of this column here, the bottom of the 3rd column. And I'm going to go ahead and just run like a little bit right down the edge. I'm literally only like 1 or 2 pixels in here. That's probably why you're not seeing too much on camera potentially, because I am literally right up against it. And I just want to add in the tiniest amount so that you can see just that crisp edge to the paper. Let's then go ahead and make our way back a few layers. Let's take a look at them. What could we do? Well, if we go to this one here, we could maybe add in fact, we'll skip that one. We'll go back to this one. We'll go to our colors, grab the brightest tone for that area, which is the middle of the 3rd column from the right. I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to keep it really subtle. I'm going to come down that edge and we'll go to our colors. I'm going to grab the darkest tone because I know I'm going to go back to the lightest one. So I'm going to grab the top of the 3rd column from the right, go back to that one, and let's add in a bit of a shadow down this edge. So that layer doesn't appear to be alpha locked. So I'll tap on it and alpha lock it. And we'll go down that edge just a tiny bit. A couple of darker spots up and down there. Lovely stuff. Now, the only thing you can do if you want to is you could go down to the sun. You could tap on it and alpha lock it. So you can't paint outside of it. If you switch your brush back to the option of soft brush under airbrushing and you go to your colors and you grab the more saturated yellow here in the middle of the 2nd column from the right, and we increase our size up to something about 20% and just create a bit of a gradient in the sun. Maybe this paper had a bit of a gradient effect. Maybe we can just get away with the 1, and I think that would just be enough just to finish off the design. Now, I urge you at this point, go back into your shadows, see where you think maybe some of them are a little bit too, you know, sticking out too much. Maybe they are just too big and it's just too much of a stacking system all the way back. You know, really think about, can I just tuck that one in a little bit further? You know, underneath where it was originally sticking out a little bit too much. Can I get back here and start to flatten down some of those shadows in certain areas? I really urge you to go back, see if you can take away a little bit here and there and see what the finished result is. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pinch with 2 fingers. I'm going to go full screen with 4 and we end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. As always, make sure to tag me in your finished creations over on Instagram and share them with the community over on Discord. And as you know, today's design is sponsored by Uppercase Designs. And I've been using, of course, their Ghost Paper Air throughout the whole of this tutorial. And I've got to say, the texture is fantastic. It's nice and fine, not too large compared to some of the other ones I've used in the past. It's nice and fine, so you don't get too much friction, but you definitely get a little bit of that sense of the paper feel underneath your Apple Pencil when you're drawing. Now, again, make sure to check out the Ghost Paper Air using the link in the description down below. Again, massive thank you to Uppercase Designs for sponsoring today's video. And as always, guys, make sure to subscribe for weekly Procreate content and also to come and check out my Patreon. There's a link in the description down below where you can go ahead and get access to even more tutorials. We're talking over 90 at the time of recording. We're very nearly at 100. So if you want to get access to that entire catalogue, go ahead and hit the link in the description down below and come and show your support. You can have your name featured in videos, sneak peeks, early access, and much, much more. So come and join the family over on Patreon. And if you like this video here on YouTube, you'll probably like this one on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.